Hello everyone, welcome back to the Overseers. My name's Proilios and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Nightwing. In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the Dallas Fuel's roster going into the fifth season of the Overwatch League. Um, as usual, we'll be sticking to our general format of going over the tank line first, then the DPS, then the supports, and then the coaching staff before giving you all our final thoughts about the team. So, Nightwing, quick initial thoughts on the Dallas Fuel's off season. Go.
I think the Dallas Fuel is just sort of building upon and improving upon the small gaps that they had last season. Uh, Considering how well they did last season, I think adding these little pieces should prepare them very well for Overwatch 2. And I think they've done that quite effectively here, which I think will greatly benefit them in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I agree. Because their main issue in the previous season was that they didn't have a ton of flexibility, like, or should I say, natural flexibility. They tried to adapt in multiple metas, and they did so quite well. To be fair to them, but still, you could tell that if they had a dedicated hit scan player, or if they had a main tank that could play wrecking ball really well, they could have done a brilliant job in more matches than they did actually do a good job in. So I think this season is going to be all about seeing how the changes they made throughout the off season affect their chances at being successful in the Overwatch 2 league, as I like to call it. But I th-
Overwatch League.
2 Overwatch league. That's a better name actually. All right, let's kick things off with the tank line then, which is pretty much the same as last year with Fearless and Hanbin. And personally, it still looks really, really strong on paper because Fearless and Hanbin were both top-notch tanks in season 4 of the league. Like Fearless, obviously the best Winston of the season last year, and also one of the best Reinhardts in my opinion. And simply because of how proficient he is at those two heroes, you can consider him a top 3 or a top 5 main tank in the league. Maybe not adaptability wise because his Wrecking Ball and Orisa weren't as good, but it was still a no brainer for the Fuel to exercise his option going into Season 5 because he was just such a pivotal player for the team. And he naturally had Hanbin to back him up. And even though, yes, Fearless and Hanbin won't be playing tank together, like, well, no two tanks will be playing together in 5v5, but even Hanbin, like, he was the best diva of Season 4 and is also a formidable Zarya player. And once again, he is a top 5 or a top 3 off tank in the league. So, again, it's a no brainer that the Fuel have retained him too. So, just having these two tanks who have had a lot of synergy with not only each other but the remaining players on the team for the most part, it's really going to help them out going into next season. What do you think, Nightwing?
Yeah, I think for the tank line, they do have most of their bases covered. I think Fearless, while he wasn't the best wrecking ball, which was Fate, obviously, you could see that his play was improving through the season. It wasn't at the same level by the end of the season as it was in the beginning. So I think that does show that it's very possible that Fearless could have improved his ball play further during this off season. Um, because as you know, like he obviously did also improve a lot from season 1, so he is a player that you have consistently seen that he does actually take time to improve his skills. So I think that's something that may just benefit the Dallas Fuel here. And yeah, I think Hanbin as well, he has pretty much all the off tank bases covered. uh, Zarya, Diva, Sigma. There are some players in the league who have a weaker Zarya or a weaker Diva at times, um, where sometimes DPS players are put in. But Hanbin can do everything like really well, and uh, I think the Dallas Fuel basically have the entire hero pool for the tanks covered already. Um, and I think with the sort of improvement mentality Fearless has, he'll be able to integrate any potential new heroes into the lineup as well. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how the Dallas Fuel actually do that. But I think they have a better advantage there compared to some other teams. Um, that said, yeah, excellent performance from them last year. Um, there were some flexibility issues, but I think they may just be ironed out over time. In terms of hero mechanics, not just aim, but in terms of really knowing how to use your abilities properly. This is something I think Fearless is very proficient at. If you look at the way he uses his primals, there are very few people that primal juggle as well as him. Arguably Smurf and Mag, but there's not too many others that are quite as good as him on that Winston primal juggling. See, I think in those sort of tanky mechanics, that's another thing that the Dallas Fuel have going for them. And I think any potential new heroes will be like just downloaded by the Dallas Fuel tank line, and so yeah, I think that sets them up really well for this upcoming game.
Yeah, very well said there. And I think on that note, we can move on to the DPS line. And let's start off with the veterans on the team, which is Sparkle and Doha. Um, and I think I'll let you go first, Nightwing.
So last year, obviously, due to Xyz's health issues, they were only able to play Sparkle and Doha, and they signed Pine for some reason, but did not do anything with him, which is understandable because Sparkle and Doha were excellent. Sparkle picked up that uh, sort of Symmetra role for the team, and also the uh, Tracer role, especially, which he did outperform many other Tracers on, and outperformed expectations by a lot. He did also play Tracer somewhat in season 3 on the Paris Eternal, but it wasn't as flashy or as good uh, as it was in season 4. He's really improved, uh, which I think again just goes to show that the Dallas Fuel is in the right mentality, is being coached properly in order to split their time between improving their current hero pool and also going out there and learning new heroes or heroes that they're not as comfortable with. Uh, I think Sparkle and Doha had an excellent rotation where, because the hero pools were so similar and they were so large, depending on who they felt was better in that particular situation, they would sub in that player for playing that role. For example, sometimes you would see that if they wanted a slightly more passive playstyle for the Echo, they would put in Doha, where you would see him be more defensive. Whereas when they wanted to go full aggro, pour all resources into the Echo, they would prefer to put in Sparkle. Similar things with the Symmetra as well. And I think that's a really big strength of the Dallas Fuel, and a difference in their playstyle versus some of the other teams, where because Sparkle and Doha overlap so well, that Dallas Fuel is able to find these micro niches where either Sparkle or Doha excels and then make the best of that situation. So I think that's something that uh, the Dallas Fuel have like just really going for them really well. Would you like to talk about the other DPS added to the lineup, Prolius?
Yeah, sure. So the Dallas Fuel added 2 damage dealers to their roster in the offseason, which are Edison and Guriyo. Now both of these are hit scan players. Now I'll just quickly address each of them individually. Firstly, we all know Edison, right? Because he's been in the league for more than 2 seasons now, and he's finally like a proper hit scan player that will likely see playtime for this incarnation of the Dallas Fuel. Since he didn't get much playtime with the Rain last year, I'm not sure how good he is at this point. Uh, but I'm happy that he's got a different team that will utilize his skills and probably start him off on Hitscan or in tracer friendly metas, right? Even though, yes, they have Sparkle, but it might help to have Edison be a sort of tracer specialist, tracer slash hitscan specialist, while Sparkle, who's known for his flexibility, starts picking up these new heroes like Sojourn and so on that are launched along with Overwatch 2. Um, I'm not expecting Edison to be wildly amazing, but we'll see because he's a little bit of a wild card because of the gap in his in his playtime. But the other signing is Guriyo, who is also a hitscan player coming from Team Diamond in Korean contenders. Based on the gameplay I've watched of his, he seems to be mechanically skilled, but I've often seen him playing a few games where he takes up risky positions and gets picked off early. So he definitely needs to work on his positioning. And whether or not he works well for the team depends on how coachable he is. So if he listens to what Russia and Aid and even Rascal, whom we'll talk about, teach him, he will be an asset to the team. But I don't think he'll be in the upper tiers of DPS players. So no top contention there, but I still think he's a serviceable pickup. And yeah, I think along with Sparkle and Doha, who are two really talented flex DPS players, like Sparkle was my pick for MVP last year, even over Leave. Um, so I think they've got a really solid base for their DPS lineup, and they don't really need to worry over there because they've got tons of flexibility among these four players and should be able to play in any meta that they come across. So yeah, anything more to add, Nightwing?
Yeah, I just like to give my own thoughts on Edison. I think while he didn't get that much playtime last year, because obviously Pelican and Kai were the mainstays of the roster for the Atlanta Reign, I think if you put Striker and Prophet as sort of the S tier of Tracer players, then I would say Edison is probably at least an A minus, and I think he can outduel some of the more average Tracers of the league. Um, and I think that's probably good enough. I also think that, like I've been talking about, Dallas Fuel having this improvement mentality and the coaching really supporting them with that. I think that might just help Edison blossom into a kind of top tier player that he hasn't really gotten to be so far. Uh, because obviously we've had our questions about how well the Atlanta coaching works to develop players, and I think the Dallas Fuel might just provide another opportunity for Edison to sort of shine and improve beyond what we've already seen from him. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the DPS.
Alright, then let's move on to the support line. This year, the Dallas Fuel have retained Fielder, as in they've exercised his 2022 option from his contract. And I think that's a good move because a Fielder is, in my opinion, one of the best flex supports in the league. He was evidently the best Moira last year and also has a top tier Ana as well as Batiste. And I felt that like he showed a lot of potential and across multiple metas. So I'm happy they've kept him in. Unlike Jexer, whom they didn't exercise the team option for. Like the thing is, Jexer was honestly a pretty decent main support last year, and with like a really nice mechanically skilled aggressive Lucio. But I felt he brought more value to the team as a leader than anything else. So if you're looking to value leadership a little bit less and pure mechanics or flexibility a little bit more, then it would make sense if you're dropping Jexer for someone like ChiYo, whom they've signed right now. Um, if I were coaching the Dallas Fuel, I wouldn't have dropped Jexer, but um, ChiYo is like honestly one of the best main support players coming out of Contenders Korea this year, and he's definitely going to be an upgrade over Jackson in my opinion, since he's had a lot of success in Contenders and has played across many metas. So he looks to be a very solid signing and could honestly be a top tier main support this season, especially considering that there's not going to be a language barrier within the team. So communication is going to be pretty smooth, and yeah, I think the support line is pretty well set up for this year. Do you want to add to this, Nightwing?
Yeah, I mean, ChiYo has been playing on some excellent teams in contenders. Obviously, first Runaway and then O2 Blast, who both did extremely well in contenders. And you could just see from the eye test itself that this player has a lot of potential. And I think he's going to be able to see that through in Overwatch 2 with the Dallas Fuel. I think it's the right environment for him. Um, because a lot of other big names have also made it to the Overwatch League in the past from the teams that he's played on, and ChiYo was definitely a part of that. So I'm happy to see him get recognized and signed to the Overwatch League. As for Fielder, I think he he's definitely a bit of a outlier even within top tier supports, which I do think he is one of them. Because I think he shined his best on the Ana and the Moira, whereas almost every other flex support player, barring Skewed, I guess, was shining the most on Batiste just because he was the most overpowered hero and he was just getting the most playtime. But Fielder's management of coalescence, his healing resources on the Moira made him get his coalescence almost 30-40% earlier than some of the best flex supports we have in the league, such as Violet or even Iris from the Atlanta Reign, which was crazy. And it just goes to show that the coaching and the individual skill of Fielder sort of coincided to make that duplicates comp work really, really well for the Dallas Fuel, where the team would all line up so that like every press of the left click would just give Fielder more ult charge than the enemy support, which I think is crazy. I mean, it's so hard to coordinate, especially with a divey sort of comp, but they made it work. And it was so clear just in in the like ult charge percentage. Fielder also set up some great nades. He is one of the top Anas, I think, in the league at the moment as well. Uh, Obviously, some players are better than him, such as Shu and uh, Twilight, but he's almost there. I think uh, he is a little bit of an outlier in that I don't really think his Batiste was at that same level as some of the other top Batiste last year, but he was almost there as well. And that's what's good about Fielder is that he can play everything that you need him to, and you don't see anything as a glaring weakness. I would say it's pretty much top tier play all across the board. So I think while them removing Jexe is a little bit strange considering the success they had last year, I also do understand that uh, ChiYo could potentially be much better than Jexe. I mean, considering the performance you've seen from Jexe on some other teams apart from Dallas, it is a little hard to say whether Jex's performance itself was that great, or was it the rest of the team being so good that Jex's shortcomings were made up for? Whereas ChiYo, you've seen consistently perform really, really well as well, and I think that New Blood definitely deserves a shot in the league. So I'm still excited about this support line, and I don't particularly think it's a huge mistake to let Jexa go.
Yep, yep. And I think on that note, we can move on to talking about the coaching stuff. Um, and head coach Rush is still going to be at the helm. And I'm really happy about this because he won the Coach of the Year award last year, and is still definitely one of the best coaches in the Overwatch League. And I like how throughout last year he pushed his team to be more flexible. And like one great example of that is how Sparkle ended up learning Tracer and then going head to head with some really well established names on Tracer as well. And I think Rush's intelligence and adaptability will help him do really well in Overwatch 2, where you're going to be essentially transitioning to a completely new FPS MOBA hybrid game, and you need to strategize, play like learn what your team strengths are really quickly, and help everyone adapt to any rapid changes in the meta. So I think he is well placed to lead the team to another successful season. And he still got assistant coach Aid with him, who worked well with him while they were with the Paris Eternal, as well as last year with the Dallas Fuel. And even though they don't have assistant coach Young anymore, they have made a very interesting signing in Rascal, who was a player until last year with the Philly Fusion, and he's just immediately transitioned to being a coach for the Dallas Fuel, which honestly worries me a little bit because he is a player with no former, at least official coaching experience, and because of that, I'm expecting him to be a bit of an intern coach. Like won't probably have much of an influence strategically, and will most likely be an individual player coach. Um, and usually you see even new like player turned coaches entering the coaching scene at tier 2 or tier 3 first, and then working their way up to the Overwatch League. But Rascal has just entered uh, from the very top, so he, let's see. I mean, he's a smart player, but I don't want to assume that he's going to be either good or bad here. What are your thoughts on their coaching situation?
I mean, for the head coach situation, gone are the days of uh, people blaming Aero for everything. And last season, you saw that Rush is definitely the way to go. I mean, uh, exceptional performance, I think, from the Dallas Fuel, and it's very well supported by their coaching staff. I think uh, how they made uh, the entire no hit scan situation work is honestly bonkers. I mean, uh, they got Sparkle to massively improve his tracer. They've worked out comps that other teams would not even dream of playing without a hit scan. I mean, burst damage has become so important in Overwatch now that there's so much damage mitigation that you really need to make a split second kill, and yet uh, so many projectile heroes being played in lieu of the hit scans for the Dallas Fuel, and the coaching staff has really brought it together in that sense. They've kept team morale high. They've consistently shown that their players are improving, and they've made a sort of pathway to that happening very possible. You've seen the Dallas Fuel also sort of strategize a little bit mid game, which they get from like quick discussions with their coach, uh, and them just understanding the game in a very proper manner. I think the only shortcoming that you ever saw from the Dallas Fuel strategically was that one game, I think, against the Shanghai Dragons, where Fearless randomly swapped to Hog. I think it was one of the tournament finals or something. Where Fearless randomly swapped to Hog and was just getting dominated by Fate on Iconworld, I think. But apart from that, the coaching, the comps that have been selected, everything has been exceptional. Dallas also pioneered that Sim TP sort of comp that really only two or three more teams picked up, but that ended up being kind of the winning formula. Uh, and I think the Dallas Fuel did pioneer that. So in that sense, I think the coaching staff has done really, really well to understand the ins and outs of the game and teach it to the players on the team. So I think excellent job done in that sense. Looking towards the future with Rascal being added, I think he is obviously a player that has won the league, and his extremely diverse and wide hero pool and his excellence on all those heroes has really shown that he does understand the game in and out as well. I think where the generic strategy or the general strategy might have been coached into the players from player people like Rush and Aid, Rascal can really teach the players how to adapt to these new upcoming heroes. Because as you know, Rascal is sort of a pioneer in that sense that he picked up the Batiste in season 2 uh, before almost any other actual support player did, and he did excellently on that. He also picked up the Echo really well, and obviously his pre-existing hero pool is also very, very wide. I think Rascal does have potential to really provide some good value to this team, especially in a new game where there are so many new game mechanics being added. I think Rascal is probably the first person you want to look to learn how do I exploit those mechanics better than the enemy team. Uh, so I think in that sense, I think the coaching staff has really just upgraded instead of made any sort of downgrade. Um, so yeah, I think good job done from the Dallas Fuel in the coaching department as well.
Yep, all very observant analyses, I would say, because I usually don't like those. That was a very good point about Dallas, like adjusting very well mid game, and yeah, I mean it just goes to show how adaptable this team is, because they they have backups for the backup plans. It seems like um, and very rarely does it happen that they are completely caught off by strategy and don't have some kind of way to deal with something that's thrown at them. So that's a great thing about the team. And I think then we can just like share our final thoughts on the team. Any overall opinions you have about them and how well you think they'll do in this season, Nightwing? You have the podium.
Okay, so I think that the Dallas Fuel are kind of a weird case because obviously last year they succeeded completely without a hit scan, but this season they've added a hit scan which can beat out some of the lower tiered sort of teams. But from what we've seen of his skill level so far, he will struggle to kind of duke it out against uh, players like Kevster from the LA Gladiators. So it's hard for me to say that the Dallas Fuel will be at the very top of the NA region, but I'm also holding out some hope that just the sort of improvement based mentality plus the fact that maybe Rascal can help the players understand some of the newer heroes of the game uh, faster than the rest of the teams who are still struggling with finding a coaching formula that works for them. For example, the LA Gladiators, who we recently reviewed, have just changed their head coach. And I don't really know what to expect from Face, but I do know what to expect from Rush, and that's consistent improvement and a thorough understanding of the game. So, in that sense, I think the coaching staff might actually be the best factor in making the Dallas Fuel succeed this season because obviously they've got excellent players, but they really need to get ahead of the game. And I think the coaching staff for the Dallas Fuel would really help the Dallas Fuel do that faster than some of these other teams. Because you saw teams like the Shock last year, they struggled with having only Krusty and their other assistant coaches turning into head coaches for different teams. There's a lot of brain drain going on in the rest of the league, but the Dallas Fuel is sort of just stacking these giga brains on top of each other like a Jenga tower. And I think that that might just really help them gain an advantage. So I think you could potentially see the Dallas Fuel at least being top three and maybe even taking that top one spot in many of the tournaments if the coaching staff really plays the cards right, I think, because they've got an excellent roster. What do you think?
Yeah, I think honestly, their their coaching staff is top notch. At least with Rush and Aid being really established coaches, and even with Rascal, like I don't think he's going to oversee the macro front, like I mentioned earlier, and he will be excellent as an individual player coach just because of his adaptability and kind of veteran status within the Overwatch scene in general. Um, I'm not worried about their tank line at all because they are just mechanically fantastic and also have like they are also fairly adaptable and even their support line looks really good. Um, I think it mainly depends on their DPS rotations, and the reason I say rotations and not lineup because I see potential in all four of these players. Now most of them are well established, like, and we also have someone with kind of like a god level status like Sparkle, but there's also like a sort of unknown variable in Guriyo because he's played in tier 2 but he's not that well established in the professional Overwatch scene. um, like that said, I do trust Rush's scouting, so I think that like even at uh, its lowest point, the DPS line of the fuel will still be competitive. They will not just roll over and let the opponents run over them. So I think it's going to be a really strong team. I think they will show up, like going in, like they will go deep into most playoffs. And like honestly, if they don't do that, it's going to be disappointing because it's still a really stacked roster with pre-existing synergy and just a few new pieces, which honestly might just end up fitting into their puzzle. So high hopes for the fuel from me at least, and yeah, I think that brings us to the end of this episode. If you liked our analyses, don't forget to share this video with other Overwatch League enthusiasts. I'm sure that they'll appreciate the gesture and all of the new information they're getting from us. And also, if you have any opinions on the Dallas Fuel, do put them down in the comment section. We'd love to check them out. Uh, yeah, that's all from me. Anything to add, Nightwing?
I mean, it's just crazy the amount of resources some of these top teams have, right? I mean, you look at the Dallas Fuel, they've got money, like just giant bags of money to throw at any player they want. And they've chosen ChiYo and Guriyo, which hopefully turns out well for them. They've got this insane headquarters that's cost like millions of dollars. I think they've got like a giant esports facility to just turn these players into like Overwatch robots. Same with Shanghai as well. So I think just that resource diff plus them having excellent resources in terms of the coaching staff as well and excellent players, I think it's just a recipe for success. It would be very strange if they don't at least win a few tournaments during the course of this season.
Yep. And yep, on that note, we are going to end our episode. Thanks a lot to everyone that's been watching, and we'll see you in our next review, which will be about the Washington Justice. Bye bye.